Well, here we are. It's 3 o'clock on Thursday, Eastern Standard Time, and we are live. This is A.R. Bernard. Thank you for joining me whenever this happens. And today I'm going to be having a guest by the name of Bishop Dale Bronner, an amazing man of God. And we've known each other for over 30 years. My goodness, we go way back and have enjoyed ministering together. And we've watched a lot of the changes that have taken place over time in our society. And those include changes in culture and changes in the church. So, hello, everyone. I see you saying hello and hi, and thank you for that. And as soon as the good bishop joins us, we're going to enter a conversation. And those of you who were able to join me yesterday for the first deputy commissioner, he was a interesting gentleman, considering the time that he had, 40 years, 4 decades with the New York City Police Department. That will be available to you so you can see it again. There's Bishop Bronner. So let me hush my mouth here, Bishop, and begin to engage you. Thank you so much for joining me. I don't know how my son interviewed you before I did, Pastor Jamal. I don't know how that worked out. So I'm going to have to check his Rolodex, and I'm using terms that are foreign to the millennial generation. But how are you today, Bishop?
I'm doing just great. Great insight. Real leaders, we emerge when there's a crisis, and so this is a prime time for us.
Excellent. And I agree 100%. Leadership is a foul weather job. As long as everything is going great, nobody cares who's in charge. But as soon as things go crazy, everybody wants to know, all right, who's responsible for this?
Right.
And that's part of leadership. Amen?
Yes, it is.
So, Bishop, what's your take on the current climate in our country? COVID-19, compounded by the senseless murder of George Floyd, has created an atmosphere that has charged the United States of America in a way that I have not seen since I was a young person back in the 60s, involved with those revolutions at the time, the civil rights movement. But there are some things that are different, and we'll talk about that. But what do you see in this present climate?
Well, it's a very, very interesting time in which to be alive. To me, something is clearly different about this one than the others that have happened in our country. I mean, George Floyd's murder seemed to have served as a tipping point for the world.
Mm.
This is the biggest social justice demonstration that has ever happened, because this is a global thing. This is not just an American phenomenon this time. This is a global situation. But what it really speaks to me and says is that the racism that we've been dealing with here in America and abroad has been almost like a disease. It reminds me of herpes that has stages of dormancy, where you don't see any activity, but yet it is there. And every now and then you have a flare up. And here, this is a major flare up. And now the call is not merely to have a little shot of penicillin, it's to find a real cure and not merely treat the symptoms any longer. This is a real cry for us not to say, hey, we need to get a broom and pull down the cobwebs. We need to kill the spider this time. So that's what's different about this one.
You and I know, and we subscribe to this parallel universe, the spiritual and the natural, so close to each other in ways that only the scripture can really reveal the truth of that. But it's interesting that here we have a virus with no vaccine for it, and we're trying to find a cure and a vaccine, and we have an issue called racism that we're trying to find a cure and a vaccine for. Here, the parallels, we cannot deny the parallels of what's happening in the physical body of America, especially, and what's happening socially.
Wow, that is such a great observation. You are absolutely right. I mean, so goes the spiritual, so goes the natural. I mean, it's amazing. We are seeing that now, and it's challenging our soul. But I'm really glad. It's a positive thing to see that how many other races are joining into this. I mean,
Mhm.
this is not just a black thing. We're seeing whites, we're seeing Asians, we're seeing Latinos, we're seeing people lock arms together this time, and people in some high corporate positions. I don't think we've ever seen the corporate world. Now, that's and the political world. So this is refreshing. This is hopeful to me. It really is.
Bishop, to see the New York Stock Exchange go into not a moment of silence, but 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence in honor of George Floyd. That's the symbolism there, to put
Uh,
capitalism on hold,
yes,
to
yes,
recognize issues of the soul within our
yes,
country is amazing. I'm getting goosebumps just talking to you about this. And
yes.
then to see NASCAR now make a major decision to ban Confederate flags because the symbolism
yes,
makes people, and it's, you say it makes it uncomfortable, but it's more than that. It's what it symbolizes.
yes,
You know,
yes,
this is the first time, because even back in the civil rights movement in the 60s, Dr. King, he wrote that letter from the Birmingham jail. Where are the white pastors? Where
yes,
are the white churches? But
yes,
today, they're speaking up, they're
yes,
engaged, they're
yes,
involved. So we
yes,
have a national consensus of outrage that is coming from both sides of the political aisle, from every sector of society, from every race, ethnicity, and culture. And I think that's what is a big difference between now and back in the 60s.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's again, that's what's so refreshing about it. I mean, to me, that's it. It says that something, honestly, from a systemic level, this time is going to change. I mean,
Mm,
because it is upending so much. It is. I mean, when you find the health profession, the business community, the world of sports and entertainment, when they get shaken up. I mean, I've been surprised at even the statements from the NFL. You know,
yeah.
you know? So that is it's great news for us, and I'm so glad to see this because we've got a generation that is on the scene now. I mean, our millennials and Gen Z, they are not this dormant little passive thing that you can just tell them to go back to their seat and go back to your corner and behave.
Right,
They
right.
are radical. They are not afraid. They are confrontational. They want truth. They want transparency. They want honesty. And so we are seeing that, head on right now. So that's refreshing to see.
And as men of faith representing the context of faith, we deal in the prophetic. We
Yes.
look at trends and patterns that help us identify the direction the society is going in, because the prophetic is predictive to the future but analytical to the present. The
Yes.
prophets analyzed, evaluated the social, spiritual, moral, and political conditions of the society. And here we are seeing that sometimes the prophetic can be so subtle and unrecognized until time passes by. And then
Yes.
we look back and we say, wow, that was
Yes.
prophetic. So when Kaepernick took a knee, all
Yes.
right, he lost his job.
Yes.
It
Yes.
cost him his job.
Yes.
Now, taking a knee is a symbol of solidarity in our nation against the very issues that he was trying to raise attention to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that it reminds me of the power of the prophecy of Amos in Amos 5:24, that about letting justice roll down like water and
Mm,
righteousness like a mighty stream. To me, justice is about the past, but righteousness is about the future. We want justice over what has happened in the past, but righteousness has to right the wrong system going forward. That's the cure. So we've dealt with this sometimes. The justice just to send a person to jail, that doesn't fix it. We got to have the righteousness element here, and we can't do that righteous part without God.
Bishop, I'm going to tell you what my son tells me on Sunday when we're ministering together. Wait a minute. Say that again. Justice we want for the past, but righteousness is what we want and need for the future.
Absolutely, because if it's not built on a foundation that is right, it won't last.
Absolutely.
So the
Absolutely.
foundation has to be right, and that so it's the pursuit of righteousness this time. Righteousness is a matter of the heart, and it's actually a curious gift that comes from God. It's not certainly based on our works, but we have a cooperative part of what man does and what God does. So this is an exciting time to see justice and mercy juxtaposed. It's and so and he said
Yeah.
he gave us the directive for us to do justice, not just to say it, not just to pray it, but to do it. It
Yeah.
involves activity on our part of cooperation with us. And that's what's exciting to me.
And it's not easy dismantling, repairing, and building broken social systems and structures.
Right.
And there are people in this country who still are in denial that our systems are broken. They have been broken for a long time. One particular individual said to me, said, well, that's why we fought the Civil War. But the Civil War did not end in the 1860s. It continued. It just changed forms. It became Jim Crow, segregation.
Yes.
All right. So now we're talking about ending the Civil War. I think now we're looking at that possibility. Bishop, I will tell you, when we look at the last 100 years of America and civil rights, especially the issue of racism, because it goes back 400 years to the 1600s when America racialized African Americans.
Yes.
So everything revolved around race identity. And it was in the early 1900s that you had three main voices. You had Booker T. Washington, who was talking about picking yourself up by your own bootstraps, the role of the church as a moral value consensus within society. He talked about our need to come together and build our communities, invest, manage our money, all of that. Yes. And then you had Marcus Garvey, who believed in Black nationalism, out of which came, the Rastafarian movement and the Nation of Islam, which I was a part of in the 1960s. And he said, Black identity is the way. We've got to build our own communities and separate ourselves. In essence, segregation as an answer to segregation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you had W.E.B. Du Bois, who said, no, if we don't change legislation, codes, policies, structural systems, all right, we're not going to move forward. And those three things, really, those three philosophies really shaped and fashioned, the movement of civil rights throughout the last 100 years. And when we were young, we had Dr. King on one side, Malcolm on the other, and we felt we had to choose. And, me and my group chose Malcolm. Malcolm appealed to the anger that we felt, the pain that we felt. Dr. King understood that until he appealed to the conscience of America and that conscience was pricked, there would be no change. So he sought to bring a level of shame and embarrassment that the whole nation could look at themselves in a mirror, and he did it effectively. I can articulate that to you now, but back then, Dr. King wasn't the one. He was weak. But here today, we have both of those things coming together. The anger, the desire to protest and push back, and at the same time, the understanding that we need peaceful protests to come together to effect change. We've come a long way in our nation. We haven't arrived, but we've come a long way. And I think, Bishop, that we've got to keep the momentum going. I have had white pastors call me from across the country, and their question, we feel the pain, not the way you feel it, but we feel the pain.
Yes.
What can we do? And that's powerful, Bishop, that they're asking, what can we do?
Yes.
And I said to them, use your voice.
Yes.
Use your platform.
Yes.
Use your sphere of influence.
Yes.
Speak out for those who have no voice.
Yes.
Proverbs 31, 8 and 9.
Yes.
Speak out for those who have no voice. Speak for those who are marginalized and disenfranchised. I'm paraphrasing A.R. Bernard version 2020. But essentially, that's what it's saying. What have you experienced in terms of your white colleagues across the country?
That same thing. It's really a very empathetic type of thing. That there's a sense of sorrow and apology that they have in their hearts, but it seems like it's coming from a very genuine place
Mm.
that they want to do something. And even, their willingness to speak up and to use their social media platforms, use their voice, I mean, has just really blessed my life. I've never seen that on that level, because some of them know that there will be negative repercussions.
Mm.
Some of them know they risk losing members, being disfellowshipped from particular groups. So that it comes at a cost. But to do what is right requires courage. It requires humility. It requires love, and it requires discipline. And to me, that's what this thing is speaking to me in volumes about. Let me ask you this, because someone reached out. Um, there's been, when you see the people doing the rioting, that we started off as a peaceful protest, and the vast majority of the protesters are peaceful, and then just a few start throwing something and breaking windows and looting, and then it goes awry, and it serves as a distraction to the whole message that's going on. But I had an older lady that recently reached out to me, and she said, it was almost like how you felt in the 60s about King seeming weak, and Malcolm, being a real strong voice. But her question was, how is it biblical? Is it biblical to forgive someone who has not asked for your forgiveness? And she was saying that we as Black people forgive people too quickly. And we're seeing the anger that is in this country, and rightly so, because hope has been deferred, and we are
Mm.
angry and we are frustrated over that, because we've been trying to peacefully demonstrate. If somebody gets killed, we peacefully demonstrate, nothing changes. So this time, and it's just hope that has been deferred. It makes the heart sick. Their hearts are sick. They're disillusioned. They're frustrated. But as Christians, we're supposed to forgive. What do you say about that? How do we handle that? Their questions, if there are people that they know who are still racist in this country, who have not apologized, and who are angry that we are demonstrating. I mean, what do we say to them?
Well, first of all, forgiveness is a gift. It is not a transaction. So you don't forgive people if they do right, if they repent.
Yes.
God so loved the world that he gave the gift of forgiveness in the person of his son, Jesus Christ. And he left people to choose whether they're going to accept it or not, respond to it or not. And that's the beauty of forgiveness, because forgiveness is designed to free you first of all. And if the person you're forgiving wants to join you in that freedom, they can. But first of all, it liberates you. Because, whatever we're yoked to in life, we carry the burden of. Dr. Cole taught us that. And if you yoke yourself to someone else's sin against you, you will carry the burden of that sin for the rest of your life. It'll destroy you internally, which will ultimately manifest itself externally in your choices, your thinking, your relationship, even your physical body. That's the reality. So forgiveness is liberating.
Yes, it is.
And you want that liberation. You want to be able to move on with your life and not be bound up like that. But forgiveness is not condoning what the person did against you. It is not saying that they should not experience the consequences of their actions towards you. Forgiveness is not saying that all of a sudden we have a kumbaya moment and we move on. Forgiveness does not say that you continue to make yourself vulnerable to that individual or that group of people or that system or structure. You should become wiser.
Yes.
You forgive to free yourself, but now you walk with wisdom.
Yes.
As you continue in your relationships.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that is so good. You said that so well. As though most people, I hope they know that was just right off the cuff. I mean,
that's because I had to do it first. I had the experience. Look, I love this country. I love America. It is an incredible experiment in pluralism that continues to move forward. We haven't done it well. And why I love it is because I see the hand of God.
Yes.
The very document that says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It was penned, Bishop, in one night by Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia.
Wow.
He spent the night writing it out, woke up in the morning, shared it with the others. They tweaked it a little bit, and then it was ratified. And but we don't realize that when he spoke those words, when he penned those words, that all men are created equal, he wasn't talking about black and brown people. He wasn't talking about Indians. He was talking about the colonies in relationship to the British government. He was saying, we are human beings, we have dignity and worth, and yet you're treating us like we are lesser beings. So he was asserting his own dignity within the context of 13 colonies. And I think God just slipped in there, have him write that, because then hundreds of years later, we would use it to hold this nation accountable to that value.
Oh, wow. That is so great, because I mean, and I guess at that time they excluded blacks because we were only 3/5 human.
Yes. Yeah. We were working our way toward humanity. And Bishop, this is why I'm a Christian.
Yes.
Because Christianity says that we're all stamped with the imago Dei, the image of God. And that is an unearned value. That is an unearned status.
Yes.
It's not because we have an education, our family name, our color, skin color, ethnicity. No, that is conferred by God. Forgive me for preaching, but you got me excited. That is conferred by God upon every human being at the moment of conception. It's unearned. We can earn all the other stuff, but that is unearned. And once we embrace that, then we should treat each other the same. It is unfortunate the entrance of sin has so broken us and wounded us that instead of treating each other as subjects of God's love and affection, we treat each other as objects of our own self-interest. And as a result, we build systems and structures that reinforce those self-interests. And that's what it is, Bishop. I'm sorry. You got me preaching, Bishop.
Well, I love it. I love it. It's, if something is not broken, we don't realize that there's a need to go back and revisit it and redesign it. And so that is so incredibly good to us to be able to see that. Now have you heard, I want to get your impression about this. I've heard some people calling for people to defund the police.
What?
Yeah.
What?
The thought of that frightened me.
How about
just
those who want to abolish the police completely? Just eradicate.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Come on, let's have some anarchy.
That I think that some of them they mentioned that they were talking about giving control back to the community, but clearly that's a new paradigm. And I can certainly understand, for example, if we had some kind of referral service when you dial 911, if you called a person who was having a mental issue because they weren't on their medication, instead of sending a police officer who's really not trained to deal in mental health issues, if we had some where that could be routed to the right place.
I think we need to re-evaluate their job description.
Yes.
And place them in a position where they're more specific in terms of their responsibility.
Yes.
They continue to expand to a place where they had to be sociologists, psychologists, as well as peace officers.
Yes.
And that's problematic. But defund them, I think they should be paid more money. And here's why, Bishop. Because every day, law enforcement put their life on the line.
Absolutely.
Their families live in a constant fear that their loved one will not come home at the end of the day. However, along with that higher pay should be higher levels of accountability. Our PBA president, Pat Lynch, and I don't agree with him on everything, but he called law enforcement professionals. And if you are a professional, you should get paid like a professional. but you
Yes.
should also have the qualifications of a
Yes.
professional, and
Yes.
you should be held accountable like a professional. And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
why there's a need for transparency,
Yes.
reform in policy, in procedures, and some of that policy needs to become legislation. All
Absolutely.
right. So beyond
Absolutely.
just what's happening within the internal affairs of the police department. All right. But how does that translate? Because if it's a slap on the wrist when I do something wrong as a cop, that's not good enough.
Exactly.
See?
Sure.
And we have to think about how we train police officers,
Yes. Yes.
the culture that we create by the way they think. And because some police departments across this country are militarized just by their training.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. That's
And we have to
wow.
learn how to build better relationships between the police and the communities
Yes.
that they serve.
Absolutely.
We've got to do something. So
Yes.
that's my take on it. And y'all in America can get upset with me and think he's supporting the cops. No. I'm supporting the same folks y'all gonna call when you're in trouble and somebody's shooting up your house and you're
Right.
dialing 911.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the thing, my heart goes out to all of the good police officers, because I don't think that this terrible, abusive, anger management kind of cop that is being portrayed now represents many of our officers who've given their life to serve. I mean,
Yeah,
I know that you have wonderful police officers in your congregation, as I do in mine,
that's right.
and now I would be intimidated to put my uniform on in the morning now, because because of the hate, you know, and the judgment, the prejudging that they get, that they're painted all with a broad brush. And so we do have to be careful, but I do agree. I think that they ought to be paid more. I do think that there ought to be better training and better accountability with that. So that's clearly, I mean, our hearts are together, but you really got to be good to handle New York. You know, you guys are an epicenter. You've got people from all over the world, different languages that are there, cultural groups, and all kinds of things. So if it can work in New York, I mean, you guys are a real litmus test. So maybe we need to work some things out there in New York, and then that'll tell us what'll happen in the rest of the country.
Well, you know, we New Yorkers are in your face. You know, we want to look. Let's deal with this. You know, but look, you take things like, and I say policy changes because you take things like the chokehold. All right, that
Yes.
was against police policy here in New York City for 29 years.
Wow.
29 years, but it
Wow.
wasn't illegal, and that's the
Uh-huh.
problem. So if it's policy and you break that policy, it doesn't mean you've broken the law.
Oh, wow.
So there's not the same level of accountability.
I
You
see.
take that knee in the neck of George Floyd. That is policy. That's part of the training
Wow.
when you're trying to subdue someone who's resisting arrest. All
Yeah.
right. So as long as it's policy, we've got to
Yes.
change it so it's no longer policy. But on some things, we got to take it beyond just a change in policy forbidding it. We've got to make it illegal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. That's so good. That's so good. I'm going to send this to some politicians. I hope that they're watching.
What are we preaching? We just some country preachers. What do we know? What do we know, Bishop?
You know, ministry is people, and government is charged with the whole task of trying to manage people. It's
Right.
a huge responsibility, and I'm glad of our partnership with this, because to me, even the conversation helps. I mean, because as you know, many of our white constituents, it just helps just to have a conversation. The world can be changed by a conversation, a
That's right.
perspective, a mindset, a prejudice. I mean, it can just be opened up just with a conversation. So this has been the healthiest thing that I have ever seen, that these conversations have been had where they have initiated them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
instead of our trying to break the door down and get them interested in something that they have no interest in.
Bishop, I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that we have to do, besides prayer,
Yes.
advocacy, activism, protest, development, we have to keep the conversation going. And we
Yes.
must not minimize the power of a conversation.
Yes.
When we go back to Genesis, what did God ask? Who told you you were naked? That was a conversation
Yes, it was.
that put
Yes.
them in a condition of inferiority and fear and shame and brokenness.
Yes.
Conversations are powerful.
They
and we
are.
have to be aware of who's in our ear, you know,
Yes.
and we need
Yes.
reasonable conversations, informed conversations.
Yes.
Because I
Yes.
will tell you, some of the stuff that I heard from some of my evangelical brothers and colleagues in ministry, I look at their videos and they're trying to help, and I'm shaking my head, Bishop. I'm saying, brother, you are clueless.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You
Yes.
have no idea of the history.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's why we need to educate and keep these conversations going, like this one.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for the education, the educating that you are doing. And I'm amazed at your ability to relate to so many people of various ages. I think it's probably because you were a rebel yourself back in the 60s.
Don't let that out, Bishop.
So you understand on so many levels, but that perspective is so good because we desperately need that. You understand the anger, but yet you understand the whole idea that we've got to affect some change in policy from a legal standpoint.
Yeah.
This time, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad to see it being done to where it's working in and impacting hopefully Hollywood. The images that we see on the news, those forms of media, all of this is a part of the business world, systems of education, and just the dialogue. And so it's an exciting time to be alive. It
Yeah.
really is. And uh, some other differences I would like to know, since because I was still running around in diapers in the 60s, but
Yeah, of course. I will not let your secret out the bag. Okay.
But it is so interesting here. But even the church where I grew up in was just a block away from Martin Luther King's church, and in fact, my pastor led the civil rights movement here in Atlanta while Dr. King was in Birmingham and Montgomery. He led the desegregation of the Atlanta police force. And Martin Luther King would sneak out of his church 1 block away from our church and come to our church and sit in the balcony and listen to my pastor preach.
Wow. Wow.
So I've had a rich heritage here in the South, dealing with some we thought that New York was the promised land. The abolitionists were in your area, so we had it probably was more subtle there, but it was blatant here in Georgia and Alabama and South Carolina and North Carolina. It was in your face, and you heard it in their southern twang. You knew from the way they call your name what they thought of you.
I will tell you, and look, I understand. Slavery is an economic system.
Yes.
And if there's anything that was lost to the South, it was the economy of cheap labor.
Yes.
$4 billion that war cost.
Wow.
And the loss of property, the change, a radical change in a way of life that they had known for so long. I get that. I understood that. But instead of adjusting to the potential new America that was expressed during Reconstruction by the advancement of Black and brown people in this country, all right, instead it became a threat.
Wow.
And the white community, not all, but many responded to that threat by trying to reclaim the past. And that's what we're seeing, Bishop.
Yes.
In this political climate.
Yes.
People who feel threatened
Yes.
by the rapidly changing culture of America. It's becoming America that they haven't known.
Yes.
It was Alvin Toffler who wrote the book, and he wrote it in 1974, and it's called Future Shock.
Yes.
And he said, this is what happens when there's such rapid change in the society that it shocks the people and they become disoriented.
Wow.
There's a sense of rootlessness because they feel that they're being uprooted from what they've known.
Yes.
And it's times like this that the church is one of those institutions that presents stability, consistency over time. that people turn to. That's why we have to understand the power of our voice and make sure that we get involved and use our platforms. So, Bishop,
Wow.
you know, you and I can talk. We talk for hours on the phone sometimes, you know that. But, you know, I try to keep these down to 30, 35 minutes. But this is fabulous. We need to do this again. And people need to hear this kind of conversation from people that they trust, that they know, and they believe have a voice. So thank you for all that you do, Bishop. And we will do this again.
Thank you for what you do. And I feel like I have been in a Black history class. I should say this, an American history class. You've taken us to the wide gamut, and that's it. I love the broadness of it because this is America, and it deals with a very diverse people. You live in perhaps the most diversified city in all of America, one of the epicenters in the world. So thank you for your perspective. You're growing through all of the different emotions of anger, of just frustration, and coming to an understanding and being able to bring such a sense of calm and bring hope, even to a generation that we can reimagine a different future this time, with these inalienable rights that God has given to us. And I'm excited about it, but it's been a joy just to dialogue with you and to just share. I learned so much and gained so much each time that we share together.
Hey, wait, that's mutual. My vocabulary expands every time I listen to you and talk to you, Bishop. All right, because you come up with words I didn't know existed in the dictionary. But thank you. I love you, my brother. It's been more than 30 years. It's just a wonderful, wonderful relationship, and these are kind of authentic relationships that bring conversation that make a difference. So thank you, my brother.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Have a great one.
God bless.
Blessing.